Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Payoff Pitch. My name is Joey Olberding, and I will be your host for all things sports. So on this Thursday, September 13th, I want to talk about the NFL because, folks, we are back in season, and I'm very excited to talk about this group of teams because I think that there are a lot of good teams, a lot of mediocre teams, and a lot of bad teams. So I want to go through division by division, talk about all these teams, and talk about why I think they'll be good or why I think, they'll be bad. And I want to start in the AFC North. The AFC North, of course, has been ruled by the Patriots for years, with barely any competition coming up against Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. And I think that'll pretty much hold true this year too. Even though the Patriots lost a lot of guys, I still think that they have more of an advantage over the Dolphins, who actually look kind of worse than they did over the past few years, even though they have Ryan Tannehill back, which is a really huge part of their team because, they had whoever starting for them. They had Jay Cutler starting for them last year, so they didn't really have much. And that's kind of a struggle for them, but the fact of the matter is their best wide receiver right now is Kenny Stills, and I like Kenny Stills, but he's not really number one wide receiver material unless he proves wrong this year, which he may very well. Now, also in the Patriots division, along with them, even though the Patriots lost some people, as I mentioned, they still have Chris Hogan, they still have Rob Gronkowski, they have Philip Dorsett, so their receiver group in general is way more lacking, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. The Patriots had so many options over the past few years that even though you don't have Brandon Cooks and Danny Amendola and some other players now, that doesn't mean that you have a bad team, and really just makes it so that you're going to have more wide receivers that'll put up bigger numbers. And I wouldn't really call that bad. They also have Rex Burkhead in the backfield, who some may say, they don't have Deion Lewis anymore. They don't have all these, four-headed monster running back type thing. But that's not bad because in today's stage of the NFL, running backs are much more about one carrier who's really, really good other than a bunch of them, like a fullback or, anything like that. It's mostly just about a really good runner, say your Le'Veon Bell, your Todd Gurley, or whatever, being able to just absolutely cream the competition. I think that the worst team in the division's going to be the Bills. The Bills don't have anybody to support Josh Allen, and LaShawn McCoy's in a bit of trouble with some sexual assault charges, so I think that won't be very good for his season. Maybe his season will be all right, but his next season, which we're not talking about here, I think will be greatly impacted by whatever is happening with him. And the other team, the Jets, I think the Jets look pretty good. Sam Darnold, their new QB, looks like he'll be pretty good immediately. He'll be the rookie quarterback that does the best. Not second-year player that, was on the bench like Patrick Mahomes, but actually, first-year player. I think he'll be great. Much better than Josh Allen in the same division. Now in the AFC West, I think all these teams are kind of even, honestly. I think all these teams are just, good. You have the Broncos, who have a good defense, and Case Keenum, and they're pretty good. I think they'll win the division, but I don't think it'll be by much because of the fact that there are a lot of just fine teams here. You have the Chiefs. The Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes now as their number one quarterback. They got rid of Alex Smith, who's now with the Redskins, but the thing with him is I think that he'll be good. I think he'll actually be a great quarterback. But I don't think the Chiefs added enough weapons to make it so that they'll be able to push themselves into the number one spot in the division. I think that the Broncos have more of an advantage because I like their defense more. The Chiefs' defense isn't even that bad. It's just that when I look at the Broncos, I see a good, consistent quarterback in Case Keenum. We don't know anything about Mahomes yet. I see good, solid wide receivers, Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas. And I see just a solid core of guys that have been there before and know what to do. And the worst team, I think, will be the Raiders. The Raiders are now under John Gruden again after quite a few years of him not being the coach there. but I don't think that'll be necessarily good for them. I think John Gruden's going to shift things just a bit too much, quite frankly, because I don't think that the Raiders were designed to be in his style of offense, at least the current Raiders. The Raiders for years have been kind of trying to get out of the John Gruden era in which they thrived for many a year. But I think that with John Gruden coming back, I think it'll start a whole new cycle, and not necessarily a good one, because they just shifted past John Gruden finally after tons of years. I think it'll just be a struggle for them. Moving on to the AFC North, home of the Bengals, I think that the Bengals will do pretty well this year. Actually, I think all the teams will be doing pretty well this year, but also all the teams will have disappointments. I think that the Steelers will probably win the division, let's be honest. If we're all looking at a team that's the best in the AFC North, we have Bengals pride. We love the Bengals, but they're just the best team. The Steelers are, unfortunately. Even without Le'Veon Bell, if James Conner continues to do really well in the NFL like he did in Week 1, with all these predictions coming just based off of Week 1, so don't expect very accurate predictions when it comes to the next few months. But still, I think if James Conner continues to perform the way he did in Week 1, that the Steelers really wouldn't be hindered much. But I do think that Ben Roethlisberger is getting maybe a bit too old, and every year it seems like he's out for a few weeks, so I'm not 100% sure about him being able to lead that offense anymore. And if James Conner isn't good, then that's just unfortunate. The worst team in the division, I think, will be the Browns. Even though that the Browns, I think, will get maybe 4 or 5 wins, which is really crazy if you're a Browns fan. They already have a tie, and that was with the Steelers. So, that has to really say something about the improvement for that team. I think that they'll be way better, but I still think they'll be worse than the Bengals and the Ravens. The Bengals and the Ravens both have problems. The Ravens with age, the Bengals with being mediocre, and also personality issues with Vontaze Perfect always getting into, $1,000 fines or whatever. It's annoying for me as a Bengals fan. I know I'm a Bengals fan. But it's just, come on, man. You don't have to do that. Nobody needed you to do that. It's just unnecessary, quite frankly. Because, come on, man. I just stop hitting people in the helmet and stop doing it intentionally. I'm not sure if that's a coaching thing or that's just Perfect himself, but for me at least, it's a bit annoying, quite frankly. And I want to move now on to the AFC South, of course. And the AFC South is one where all the teams I think have some pretty good potential. You have the Titans. You have the Colts, you have the Texans, you have the Jaguars. All those teams, I'm like, okay, yeah, they could do something. But I think that the Jaguars will win. They got to the AFC Championship game last year. They have a great defense. I also really like their offense. Leonard Fournette and TJ Yeldon in the backfield is just pure bliss if you're a coach and you want to find some guys that are just, going to go out there, run really fast, and run fast well. And I think Blake Bortles is the most consistently inconsistent quarterback out there. And that's mostly a bad thing, but when it's not, it's beautiful. And I think that'll be nice for them. I want to move on to, the wild card teams. I talked about who's going to win the division, but I didn't even really mention the wild card teams. And this is where I'm going to be talking about the other AFC South teams, because I think that a lot of them are able to fall under here. Some would say that the Titans are, who's an AFC South team, but with the loss of Delaney Walker in the Week 1 for, the entire season, I'm very skeptical about how they'll be able to perform. And Mariota got hurt too, but that doesn't look as permanent. So I don't think that that's going to be good for them. I think that there's a chance they'll still make the postseason, but I don't want to, bet on it. So the other teams I have here, I think the Chiefs will get into the wild card. As I mentioned before, they look, the same, if not better. And they still have all their guys that they've been building on for the past few years, and they all still look fine. Mahomes, he'll probably be good, like I said. They still they even signed Sammy Watkins. I mean, I'm not the biggest Sammy Watkins fan, but I will say that he is a pretty good receiver when he's a good receiver. So you got to give him credit there. The other thing I'm thinking, and this some people may think this is a bit of a stretch, but I think the Colts are in contention. They will not make it. I think that the Texans will. But I think the Colts with Andrew Luck, oh man, they can do something magical. A few years ago, when the Colts went on that run, they beat the Bengals and all that stuff. I think that they were just led by Andrew Luck. I think it was as simple as that. I think that they just figured out what they were doing and figured out Andrew Luck is their guy. I think it's really as simple as that. And I think that they can do the same thing this year. But I do think that the Texans, with Deshaun Watson back, and still with all their guys too, still with that incredible defense with J.J. Watt. Oh, that defense is like pure butter. I love it. I don't love pure butter, actually. Just, moving on. That's really fun. That's really great. And so I think that the Chiefs and the Texans will be able to make it through. I think they'll get to the postseason. But the NFC is way stronger, and you're going to see that when I talk about the teams here, starting with the NFC East. In the NFC East, you have the Eagles. The Eagles are, of course, the team that won the Super Bowl last year. Everybody knows that. But there are also some other teams there. There are the Cowboys. There are the Giants. I mean, those are two notable teams, I'd say. I think that the Giants will be the worst in the division. I just think that. I mean, the Giants don't really look like they've made that much of a leap from the previous years. They have all their guys healthy. I mean, that's something. But they still have Eli Manning at quarterback. They have Saquon Barkley, a guy who looks like, easy rookie of the year, quite possibly, so far after week 1, which he was absolutely insane. I just, I'm not sure. I don't think they'll make a push. I think that the Cowboys will also be disappointing too. Even though they have Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, their offensive line, man, their offensive line is just totally scrapped. I don't know what happened. Great Cowboys teams in the past have always been known for having the best offensive line in the league. And the thing is, the Cowboys have one of the worst in the league right now, and they have a bunch of guys that are pretty impressive. Like I said, I think that they have a lot of solid players, but man, if you want to be a good Cowboys team, you need to have a solid offensive line, and that's what I really know as a Bengals fan, that offensive line is important, and you need a good one, as Bengals fans will have learned in the past few seasons, unfortunately. I just don't think that the Cowboys will be good because of that. I think that they'll do better than the Giants, but I think that they will not be a playoff contender, especially with the other teams on this list. I swear. In the West, I mean, you have two really good, solid teams. You have the Rams and you have the 49ers. Now, I think the Rams will win the division here, and I think that because the 49ers, even though the Rams aren't exactly the most experienced club, they're more experienced than the 49ers because Jimmy Garoppolo has only started very, very few games. They've started 4 games for the 49ers, I believe. 4 for the 49ers. And 3 for the Patriots. So that's 7 career games. And people look at him like he's a star already. People look at him like, oh man, this guy's just going to absolutely destroy everything in the league. But I'm not so sure. I like the 49ers. I think they have a good group of guys around them. I think that they'll even maybe be in contention, but I do not think they'll beat the Rams. The Rams now have Brandon Cooks, Cooper Kupp, Jared Goff's a good quarterback. The 49ers aren't going to be all that, but they'll still be pretty good. And the worst team, I think, is going to be the Cardinals. The Cardinals have no idea what they're doing at QB, and sorry for them, I guess. They need to get Carson Palmer out of retirement, I think. I'm kidding, but maybe they should do that. In the NFC North, this is one of the weirdest divisions because you have the Lions, the Packers, the Vikings, and the Bears. Now, the Bears aren't going to make that push, but they still don't have a terrible team. I don't think Mitch Trubisky, the QB for the Bears, will make that push this year to be good at all. But I do think that the Bears will be better at the very least. Maybe not. I think they'll be along the same lines as they were last year in terms of bad. But, they'll be not as bad, but the record will still show because this This division, oh man, the Lions have no chance to win the division, and the Lions aren't even bad. The Lions still have Matthew Stafford. They have some fine wide receivers. They have Golden Tate. They have Marvin Jones. I mean, that's not bad. But compared to the Packers and the Vikings, man, if you're a Packer, you have Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers is good. If you're a Vikings fan, you have a great defense and a solid quarterback in Kirk Cousins, and that's also good. And I think these two will absolutely battle it out all year. It's going to be back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I think that the Vikings will win. Why do I think the Vikings will win? I just think that they still have a pretty solid offense, while the Packers don't have as strong of a defense. Now, this is not to say that the Packers will not be good, because they will. They'll be great. But I don't think they'll be able to win the division. They'll have to do stuff in the wild card. That's a spoiler for one of my teams in the wild card. Moving on to the South. The South is also really interesting because all the teams are good. But the worst team, I think, before I get into the good teams, because that's all the other ones, are the Buccaneers. And I say the Buccaneers because I don't have much faith in Jameis Winston, quite honestly. If you saw week 1, you saw Ryan Fitzpatrick, while Jameis Winston was hurt, was a star. He was just absolutely out there. He was throwing all these crazy touchdown passes. He was like the most efficient quarterback that the Buccaneers have seen in a long time. But Jameis Winston, he'll come back. He'll be the starter no matter how well Fitzpatrick does, because the Buccaneers spent a number 1 overall pick on that guy. So I don't have faith. Mike Evans they have a good receiving group. Mike Evans is great. I love Mike Evans. They don't have a good running game, though. Peyton Barber is their current number 1 running back just because the guy they drafted turned out to be bad. So they had to go for Peyton Barber, who people were expecting maybe to be, maybe even the third back, not really great. So I didn't have faith in the Buccaneers, but the other teams I think will be great. You have the Panthers, you have the Falcons, you have the Saints. And I think that the division winner will probably be the Falcons. And I say that with, I'm not 100% sure, because any of those 3 teams could win, and I would be perfectly okay with it. Because the Falcons, they've been there. They know how to do their stuff. They have Matt Ryan, is still a solid quarterback, even at, 36? I mean, that's not terrible. Not terrible at all, in fact. They have Julio Jones, who's definitely not terrible. They have Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman still. I mean, that is a great group of guys to play around. And then you have the Saints. The Saints are in kind of a worse position because Mark Ingram, who's a good running back, is hurt. But they still have Alvin Kamara absolutely raking and destroying in the league, running everywhere, up and down around the field. And Drew Brees is still a great quarterback, still Hall of Fame player, much like Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, and then the Panthers. The Panthers have Cam Newton. The Panthers don't have great receiving. They haven't for a while now, unfortunately. And I don't think that they'll be really in contention in the division. They'll be good still. I mean, the Panthers are a good team, but they've already had a bunch of injuries. And that's not good when it's, going into week 2 of the season. So that's what I think there. And the wild card, I already gave my spoiler. Oh, the Packers, they're going to the wild card. Crazy. All that. And I don't think the Lions or the 49ers will really be able to contend for the wild card. As I mentioned, the Lions are in an insane division, and the 49ers just don't really know everything yet, which isn't their fault. It's still the first year of them doing that. So I would say it's between the Panthers and the Saints for the last wild card. And as I mentioned, I liked the Saints more because the Panthers, they just don't have as good of a receiving group. And really, it's as simple as that. I look at it as Cam Newton can be great. He can also be bad. Drew Brees is consistently great and has a consistently great receiving group. I feel like one of those teams has the advantage here. Also, the Saints, the Saints, have a better defense, which is crazy. If you said that to me 5 years ago, I would think, oh, really? You're from the future. No. Let's jump ahead. We have our playoff contenders. Let's jump to the end. Let's jump to the Super Bowl. So, in the AFC, I think we all know who the favorite is in terms of who's probably actually going to make it. And that's who's probably going to actually make it. The Patriots know what they're doing. The Broncos are worse. I'm not saying they don't know what they're doing because, it's still the first year of the Case Keenum experience. But they have an experienced coaching staff. They have some experienced players, but not Patriots level. The Jaguars. I love the Jaguars. I love their team. I really do. But as I mentioned before, they have Blake Bortles at quarterback, and I think that's really what's keeping them from making that stride over the hill. I really think so. The Jaguars, they can be crazy good. They can also be crazy bad. Their defense is consistent, though. It all depends on the offense. The offense is really what makes or breaks this team, because the defense is, the lifeblood. So there has to be a body for it to work with, and that would be the offense. You can't constantly get field goals when you're playing the Patriots, because as we learned from the last AFC Championship game, never count Tom Brady out. But still, in the NFC, the teams are so much stronger, I swear. You have the Vikings, you have the Saints, you have the Falcons, you have the Packers. I mean, absolutely insane. So, I think, even though I said that the Vikings will win the division, I think that the Packers can make it to the Super Bowl before the Vikings can. That's because I have faith in Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, I think, just absolutely knows how to come. If you watched Week 1, you saw that Aaron Rodgers made like a Jesus-like comeback. I shouldn't say Jesus-like because that's not true, but it was like a miracle comeback for Aaron Rodgers. He came back out of nowhere, and he was just, throwing passes. What a comeback. Really quite inspiring, quite frankly. The Saints are also experienced, but the Falcons beat up in their division, and the Saints, I like them. But I think that the Packers are better. I think it really is as simple as that. I like both teams a lot. In fact, I even like the Saints more. But I just think that the Packers are better. That goes for all these teams, really. The Rams are good, but they're less experienced. The Eagles, I don't think will repeat, just because I don't think they will. This is all my opinion, and I'm just laying it out there on the line. I really think all of this, and I don't like the Falcons. Once again, not as good as the Packers. So, it's the Super Bowl. You have the Patriots, and you have the Packers. Who will win? Well, let's look at the leagues. You have one league where it's super easy, and you have one league that's super difficult. I think, honestly, you could take any of the teams that made it to the postseason in the NFC in my little world, in my little prediction world, and I would say that they would win against the Patriots. And if you think that that's insane, you're probably right. Like I said, these are predictions after 1 week, so none of this is final at all. But the Patriots at the moment have no wide receivers, and I think even though it can be a strong suit sometimes, I don't have faith in Philip Dorsett. Julian Edelman currently suspended. I don't think Chris Hogan is the best wide receiver. I don't think he's bad. And Rob Gronkowski, I mean, we'll see what happens with him, but he has an injury history, and that's a bit scary if you are somebody who roots for them, quite frankly. The Packers win the Super Bowl. Everybody's going insane. Green Bay wins. Aaron Rodgers. Whoa. And those are my predictions. And I predict that the Super Bowl party will be not as insane as last year. And with that, that'll do for this week's edition of the Payoff Pitch. Make sure to check us out on TuneIn Radio 95.7 MRC. Search for us up on YouTube at Clark Montessori. And follow us on Twitter at SoCo Club. And from me, Joey Olberding, I hope that you enjoyed this edition of the Payoff Pitch. And make sure to check out 95.7 for more Payoff Pitch and so much more.